weekend of college football.
No doubt about it. You know, we talk about the business side of sports. I love how early they are pushing this. Other conferences out there talking about what they're going to do with some coaches talking about playing the big dog in there. And I like the fact that they understand that you can't quite get enough of the SWAC right now, particularly in football. Yeah, it's ended, but as it ends, let's start playing up the other end in terms of this big game Orange Blossom Classic down there in Miami, greater Miami area. I like what they're doing from a business perspective. I think it's important. Get the information out, repeat it, send it to everybody, give them a chance to get excited about it, keep pushing it. So that was brilliant there. I love what Tiffany Green does. She does a great job. Found a way to get down to MC it. I'm sure that was entertaining, that she is solid in terms of what she does and delivers. HBCU game day. I can't get enough of it. And for that, let me give a shout out. I know a lot of folks, for whatever reason, push Jay Walker and they let him get his numbers, but I love what he does. He's entertaining to me. Yes. And so he keeps you interested. He keeps it light. He keeps it controversial. He finds things to talk about. And the point that I really like, he knows his craft. He's good at what he does in terms of breaking down matchups, things to look at inside the game. And that's what is most important to me. The other stuff's still really good and helps deliver that. But the fact when he brings up something they may consider in a play and then it happens and it doesn't happen, he say, well, you know, you could have looked at it like that. I really appreciate that.
No doubt about it. He's good at his craft. And get this, Dr. Bill, he's a pretty good golfer too. Although I will say, if he's listening, I drove him on one hole. So just had to throw that out there, Jay.
In fact, reach out to him, let him know we need to get him on the show and see what he thought in terms of this past season, everything through it, and then leading off next year, not only with the SWAC, but with the MEAC in regards to his thoughts on that. We might need to get him on here before too long. Before we get into some of these other things. But let me get back to this. Kay Johnson, good evening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Time for the class. Let's go. William E. Davis, Jerome G. Sutton. He's a regular now. I appreciate you representing for those FAMU rallies down there. Ricky Burton's in here, making sure that we know what's going on. John Jenkins, giving us appreciate the love. Oh, only for the goodie. One of my students. Herman Shelton, you can walk around the golf links. I know it. Yes. Throwing up the frat sign. I can appreciate that as well. No doubt about it. We give you a little love there, just a little love there. Let's see who else we got in here before we get into some more talk. Dwight Moore, good evening from the Big D. Go Jags, representing Jags out of Big D, Dallas in the house. Jay Mack, Morgan State Finest photographer, one of the best out there in the business. Michael Ford, as he said, Labor Day weekend will be off the chains. And he got the chains in there, too. I like the pictorial part of that.
Nice.
South Carolina State, great point. John Jenkins is here. Great point, Michael Ford. I appreciate you sharing it. Keep on coming. With that, Charles, what are some things that is on your mind right now? What's hot and heavy? What do you want to discuss? What do you want to put on the table?
Sure. Well, we start off on a somber note, if you will, Dr. Cavill. Robert L. Bobby Vaughn, longtime CIAA HBCU legend. He passed away the other day. Longtime Elizabeth City University head basketball coach. He was the basketball coach at Elizabeth City for 33 years. Started at the age of 21. He won more than 500 games, including 2 CIAA titles. And this article was coming to us from HBCU Game Day, but he was a contemporary of legends like Clarence Big House Gaines and, of course, North Carolina A&T's Cal Urban. So definitely wanted to wish condolences to his family in terms of what he was, his legacy that he left at Elizabeth City State University.
Yeah, certainly. I'm glad you brought that up. We certainly need to make sure that we respect those that have paved the way through the years. No, it's good that you got that out there. So I thank you for that. With that, Alabama State draws number 7 Florida State in the tennis tournament. So that's moving forward. It's going to be fascinating to see how that ends up. These teams are representing out there in a lot of ways there in South Carolina State out of the MEAC in terms of Division I teams earn a top seed as they get into the NCAA first round matchups as they will face off with number 1 North Carolina. So that's a tough matchup. Anytime you find a number 1 team, you're into it in so many different ways. But let me jump back to you. What are some other things? You can comment on that and then move right into your next thoughts as well.
Oh, so Jackson State with a big win over UL Monroe the other day, 4-2 win. Anytime you get those out of conference wins for baseball team, Jackson State baseball has been putting in work. We had Coach Omar Johnson here on the lab a couple of weeks ago. So these teams got one last weekend of swag play, and then we get ready for tournament action next week.
Yeah, that was a great point when you talk about that big. I saw that at score and the fact they got the win 4-2 over Monroe, as you talked about. Let's dig a little deeper into the baseball for a minute before we turn the leaf. As you said, you go into this last weekend of matchups. Any thought in terms of that? Or you believe they're going to be able to get that Valley game in?
I think so. It looks like they're going to be able to get that Mississippi Valley game in this weekend. So we'll see if Jackson State can finish out the SWAC season undefeated. But, my attention is already turning towards tournament play next week. You have Jackson State has done tremendous in the SWAC this past season. But, there's that outlier sitting out there, and that's Grambling. Grambling with that midweek win against Jackson State. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see whose pitching holds up, because it always comes down to in the SWAC tournament, if you got some starters that can take you into some late innings, if you will, in those opening games, and you have those arms to bear to get to the championship game.
Man, you're just going to skip over the league that they undefeated going in the Valley. If they can get it in, Valley would make their season obviously struggling all year. But if they can stop the win streak, which is the last team to do it, is Alabama State. I know you want to get into the tournament, but let's finish this regular season. Jackson State has done it. I mean, the number one, the Black College Nines, getting votes as you think in the top programs, particularly within that region. They're playing some really good baseball at this time. Can they finish the deal, at least in the regular season? Let's start there. Obviously, the tournament is a different beast, and they'll get that. But I like to separate the two. Let's give some credit in terms of what you're able to do in the regular season. I know that so much emphasis on the tournament, but that's a different type of race. I want to respect what they did, especially going undefeated in the COVID environment. What it took to do that is a statement in itself. And so I want to acknowledge that in so many different ways. Kudos to what Jackson State is doing. But your point is taken that a lot is weighted on the tournament, excited about the tournament. And the minor league ballpark is going to Fred Whitting. Jumped out there and said, Winston-Salem State, HBCU Heritage Center, we have to tell our own stories. Talking about your comments and opening up the show, no doubt about it. Anthony Weston, what's up, everyone? No doubt about it. Jumping in here and giving us some information. As we said, William E. Davis, G. Boom Holly, should be no problem for them to do that in baseball. Yeah, I know, but something tricky about the baseball games. We just don't know. But I agree with
baseball, right?
Chips on Jackson State at this point. Newton Jackson. Oh, Dr. Newton Jackson, thank you for showing us some love coming into the lab. That's a mentor of mine on the professorship level out of North Florida, getting in. I hope everything's going well with you. And I'm sure you're about to end the semester if you hadn't ended it already. Getting those grades in, about to take some much needed rest. JSU baseball is putting in that work, no doubt about it. It's fascinating to see what they're doing. But to your point, let's come on back over to the West. Talk a little bit about that side. You mentioned Grambling State, who has split with Jackson State, as you appropriately mentioned. But they lost 2 out of 3 to Prairie View, a team that everybody had thought about. They have swept their last 2 games, took 2 out of 3, taking 2 on Saturday, where they really brought out the bats and beat up on Grambling. And guess what? That was in Grambling. Now, that was in Prairie View, which would have been a statement of itself, but you go on the road to get that. I'm not sure what's going on in Prairie View, but kudos. I have to give them much credit in terms of what they got going on. That was a big victory, which leads us up to this weekend when you talk about Grambling. Grambling needs to hold on. They can't afford to lose to Pine Bluff, and they play Pine Bluff tough just in terms of that matchup. I think they can get it done. They don't have to win but one game to hold on to that number 1 seed, but that's something at least to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, in terms of how.
And then obviously you got the Southern and Texas Southern matchup with 2 teams that are struggling, and they're trying to avoid playing Jackson State in some ways in their first round in a lot of ways, I would think about. So that, to me, that has some intrigue in itself for a different reason. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of intrigue, and I can't say enough about the 180 that Prairie View baseball has done. When you talk about they've swept Southern. They had a home series against Southern where they swept them. The defending SWAC champions. That was huge. Taking 2 or 3 from Grambling on the road. That was huge. And like you said, Grambling really has to do what they need to do to hold on to that #1 seed this weekend against Arkansas Pine Bluff. So still a lot of intrigue sitting out there over there in the West. And, when you talk about Southern and Texas Southern fighting it out this weekend, it's going to be really interesting to see how those programs are looking going into the tournament, because I don't know, Dr. Phil, they seem to hit a button and they play some of their best baseball right around this time of the year. So a lot of intrigue going into this last weekend to see if you can go in on the upswing.
No doubt about it. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Stick with this. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with our first interview. Darren Moore will come on the show and give us some insight about some women gymnastics. We're going to go off the map a little bit, but get ready for this great interview. We'll be right back after this quick break.
True Black Essentials is a retail opportunity to bring Black businesses under one roof, where every product on every shelf in every aisle will be Black owned and Black produced by people all over the world. Statistics show that the $1.3 trillion of spending power that we have as Black people can easily be turned into each Black person having $2 million if we were to shop Black for 2 years. So True Black Essentials will launch an e-commerce store on November 1st, 2020, but we will open up brick and mortar stores in Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, Houston, and Jacksonville, with the very first store opening in Atlanta, June 19, 2021.
They play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAG, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're in with our guest on this first interview of the evening, Coach Darren Moore, founder of Brown Girls Do Gymnastics. Man, this is going to be a fascinating conversation, talking about the event that's going to be at Grambling, get into a little question about HBCUs and gymnastics. How would that look? How would that work? Why should it be done? But before we do that, if you would share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So Darren Moore, I am a coach. I've coached for probably about 25 years now. I started Brown Girls Do Gymnastics in 2015. It was something that I wanted to do, but didn't really have the platform to do it yet. And also I have a gym, or ran a gym, so I didn't necessarily have the time. But I saw Brown Girls Do Ballet on Instagram. And she posed a question that year and asked, what should I do this year? And I said, start a gymnastics one. And she deleted my message and inboxed me and was like, you do it yourself. And so we started Brown Girls Do Gymnastics. I guess a little bit more about me. That was more Brown Girls. I'm from Tallahassee, so FAMU is like in my blood, and that is one of the reasons why I have so much love for HBCUs. And I've been coaching in Atlanta. I started coaching in New Orleans and then coached in Atlanta for about 20 years, 20 of those years now. Yeah.
Fascinating. Charles, if you would jump right in here and ask a follow-up question.
Sure. Well, I'm always curious in terms of a coaching gymnastics, for parents who start seeing that something, the first flip or whatever the case might be, or the first, handstand, at what point do you think, the coaching part starts to come in, or you should put your, small ones into gymnastics?
That's a hard question. I think gymnastics is such a great sport just for movement, for large and small motor skills. So whether your child is, we've had some people come to us and say, you know, my child is really rigid and I want to put them in gymnastics so they can be a little bit more fluid. We've had people call and say, my kid is jumping up and down on the bed and doing all kinds of flips. I want to put him in gymnastics. I broke my leg at 5 years old. So it's like, put her in gymnastics instead of breaking her leg outside grandma's house.
Yeah.
So, so there are a lot of reasons why you do it. As far as like when does serious coaching start? It depends on the gym and it depends on the coach. I don't like to serious coach until and this sounds even crazy to say, but 6 is where we would start like competition and moving towards maybe elite. That's where you start to really see if they're coachable, if they have the attention span to do it. So yeah, did I answer your question?
No, I think you did, because I'm you know, the second part of it is, you know, can you break down kind of the levels? Because my little one, she started little, you know, we could see her, you know, active on the jungle gym and being able to flip. And she has progressed through to where she is now to competitive gymnastics. But where is the sort of the line of demarcation? Because you will have coaches who might pull you aside and say, you know what, maybe she needs to, you know, train 8 hours a day. And it's like, whoa, you know. So I'm always curious in terms of where does the needle move on that?
Yeah, gymnastics has grown so much. So now the way that the levels work, there's kinder gym, you know, that's you bring your child in, they're 2 years old and they get to play on the equipment and you see if they like it or not. And then there is developmental gymnastics, which typically starts at 5 years old. It's still a rec program. It's just to get you acclimated to the equipment, you know, fear factor, let you walk across that 4-inch beam. That's rec. He's shaking his head like no 4-inch beam.
I mean, I tried the 4-inch beam when it was like 6 inches off the ground. I can imagine when you get it into some type of regulation at whatever age. So yeah, balance may not be. Yeah, it may not be my thing. I'll let you all do the great stuff, and I'll just be in amazement. But keep going, please.
So there's developmental gymnastics, and then there's pre-team. Typically, it's where they're starting to do maybe 2 or 3 hours in a practice. They might come 2 days a week. And then competition, and competition is all levels. We have level 1 through level 10. Level 1s are usually the very tiny ones. They're competing cartwheels and forward rolls, you know, things that you think are a little bit more accessible, but when you do it, it's still hard. And then level 10 is where, so like the college girls that you see, they're doing like level 10 skills. And then elite is Olympic level, and then of course collegiate is its own level. So gymnastics is so broad. It's not, I know a lot of people think Olympics, and it's not just Olympics.
Sure.
Yeah. Before we get into some of this HBCU talk, I want to follow up in terms of what traits does someone have to be successful in gymnastics, and what is their central talent level? You kind of wrap that up in one.
Yeah. Coachability is big. So talent is, you need some talent, but coachability is huge. And I think any coach, regardless of the sport, would say that. There's strength and flexibility. Strength, flexibility, and body awareness are the 3 things that we look for. So if you have those traits and you're coachable, you can be a great gymnast.
I push for gymnastics at HBCUs. Let's get into it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm sure like we all know what it feels like to be on an HBCU campus, you know?
No doubt.
Yeah. And so again, I grew up in Tallahassee. I went to Xavier, but I grew up in Tallahassee. And so being in Tallahassee and going to FAM, I was going to to home games. My parents had season tickets, you know, so the band, the whole nine. We saw the cues and the Kappas online and all that stuff. Like growing up, you know, it's like it's a part of me. It's culture, and the fact that there's a whole like section of girls who are super talented and, you know, and can do these amazing things, but they can't bring that to an HBCU, and they can't feel what it feels like to be at an HBCU. So that's the biggest thing for me. And then outside of that, it's another opportunity. Like, why not? Why wouldn't an HBCU give the opportunity to a whole group of, and now, you know, Black and brown girls doing gymnastics, it's not just a couple, a lot.
Yeah,
That's right. That's
like,
right.
you know, that they're missing out on those opportunities. So yeah, those two for me are huge.
A great point you make there. Go ahead, Charles.
Does the skill set translate? Because when we look at the cheerleaders, they're tremendously athletic. Does the skill set easily just transfer over to gymnastics, or vice versa?
So a lot of times you'll have gymnasts that go cheerleading, not so much cheerleaders that go gymnastics. So and I'm a little biased, but even technically, if you do gymnastics, you're already doing the floor exercise, so you can tumble, right? You already have the strength, you already have the flexibility. So if you're a base for a cheerleader, you got the strength from gymnastics. If you're a flyer from cheerleading, you have that flexibility. I'm doing this because this is somebody's foot, but the flexibility for cheerleading. So you can definitely go from gymnastic to cheerleading, and I know a lot of people that did. I did too. Going from cheerleading to gymnastics is tougher because for cheerleaders, you're doing everything floor, and so to put a cheerleader on a beam or a set of bars, they probably won't be able to do that. And that's something that you develop in gymnastics from the time you're 5.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That's great information. Thank you. I like that. That's good stuff. I wouldn't have thought about gymnastics and cheerleading, but the way you broke it down is fascinating. So let's get in this petition.
Well, you know, like
change.org, 21K. Go ahead.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
No, you were about to say something else about the gymnastics. I was going to ask you about the petition exchange, so you can talk about both.
Yeah, I was gonna say Walter Payton did ballet. Y'all know that, right? So like gymnastics is not just, I know that's ballet, not gymnastics, but gymnastics translates to all sports. So it's you don't want to just say like, oh well, it's for girls because they want to flip. Like it's coordination. So it's just a little jewel for gymnastics. But anyway, you asked me another question. Sorry.
Yeah, I was asking. No, that's a good point. I'm glad that you put that out there because we do need to make sure that we have that type of conversation and information. That's how we all learn if we don't know, and those that do know can continue to share. You have this petition on change.org, over 21K signatures. What do you hope to do once you get to 25,000 or more signatures?
Yeah, so originally we wanted the petition to bring awareness. USAG picked it up and they posted it on their Instagram. That's kind of how brown girls like got the attention of Grambling. So the petition has already done what it was supposed to do. We wanted to continue to grow because we can take those signatures to sponsors and say, hey, you know, we have this thing and we want it to be done, and so they can help sponsor gymnastics at HBCUs. Yeah, that's the hope. But originally, awareness is what we wanted, and it's done it. So that's cool.
No doubt about it. Great point that you make, and you're on your way. Last question I have for you. How did the conference partnership with Grambling, as you brought up, how did that come about?
Yeah. So Mark Newman over at Grambling reached out to us, and his granddaughter is a gymnast. Well, she's 4, but she's a gymnast and can do like cartwheels on beam already. His daughter was a gymnast. And so there's a coach Apples, who actually knows them and knew that we were trying to get gymnastics at HBCUs, and she connected us, and it went from there. It was right on time and super special. So yeah, that's how it happens.
Go ahead, Charles. Get your question.
Well, I was curious, what would the infrastructure of a gymnastics program at a HBCU look like?
Can you ask me something a little bit more specific?
The equipment needs, the coaching, or just what does the infrastructure of that of a gymnastics program look like?
Now I got you. Yes. So one of the big things, and you said equipment. One thing that a lot of smaller schools do, they train at a private gym, or a club gym is what we call it in gymnastics. So UGA, I'm in Atlanta. UGA is an hour and a half away. Back in the day, there was a rec program or a club program that trained in the same gym that UGA trained in. That was 20 years ago. So it's something that we can mirror when it comes to HBCUs. If there's a gym, so for Grambling, there's a gym that's 8 minutes away from their campus. So instead of Grambling having to, invest in a completely new gym, they just train at this other gym.
Sure.
Yeah, so there are those possibilities. As far as who we're competing against, there is an independent conference. So Grambling doesn't necessarily have to have other HBCUs. Like if the SWAC doesn't have another HBCU that has a gymnastics team, there's still a conference that they can participate in. So there are a lot of ways around like Grambling being the only school or the first school. Our hope is that we can get all of them to do gymnastics, and then we can have our own conference. But yeah, there are ways around it. There's also, William and Mary's and Penn State, I know William and Mary's, they operate off of a $50,000 budget. So it's an expensive sport, but there are ways that, we can make it happen and not have to spend a whole lot of money.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad that you put that last part in there so people can understand while it is an expensive point, there are some ways to do it in a way that doesn't make it as expensive. Last thing I have here is give you a little time to make any comments that you would like to share with our viewers of the general public.
Yeah, so our website is www.browngirlsdogymnastics.com. So make sure to go to our website. All of our information is there. We have memberships. We did an HBCU Gymnastics Day, which was awesome. Our conference is, it's an annual conference. So this is our 5th one. And it is July 23rd through the 25th. The girls are actually training, and we're also, and parents come also. So it's 2-part. The kids train, and the parents learn the ins and outs of gymnastics, which is great for brown folks because generationally we didn't do gymnastics. So they're learning things that other folks knew before. And then we have a competition that's happening on Sunday. Look at his face.
Yes. I'm fascinated. Yeah.
There's a competition that's happening on Sunday, and it's invitation only. So we invited a few special gyms to participate in that, and an exhibition, a pro exhibition that's happening directly after the competition. So gymnasts who are retired collegiate gymnast or level 10 gymnast. We have a Cirque du Soleil performer who was the gymnast, and they will be competing, a fun competition at the end of the kids competing. So, yeah.
One last question.
Oh, that's nice. Great job. We'd love to have you back to learn a little more about this and see how things went. We want to thank you for your time. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Coach Darren Moore. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back after the break.
Thank you.
I'm returning to Clinton Parish, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Parish, we take the pain out of being heard.
This is Brian Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
It was a monumental game for A&M and Tampa. It was a monumental game. Somebody had to lose, and thank God it was them this time.
We knew it was going to be a battle. Look at Jake Gaither's record. 202 and 36, I think, some off-the-wall figures.
And nobody would play him because they didn't want to take a chance of getting beat. But the truth of it is,
over 46,000 tickets. Blacks were sitting in the east stands. Whites were sitting in the west stands. And the score wound up 34-28.
The only thing we proved that we wasn't inferior, that we were not inferior, and we were not afraid.
For one night, for 160 minutes, we was better than them.
You gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee State? Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles.
This is Dr. Cavill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. You heard our previous interview with Coach Darren Moore talking about brown girls do gymnastics. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Now we're going to come back with A.D. Drew, our very own from BCSN, with Brian and A.D. on the sports wrap. But he's going to take us a little bit into baseball. I see you representing your home state Cardinals, so I think that's purposeful, which makes some sense. I like the synergy that you have going there, A.D. And we're going to go back and talk about last week's small college World Series, and just some general thoughts in terms of what took place in that matchup, how it went, and just give some people some insight. And some people obviously probably kept up with the scores, but you did have this football game going on that may have got some people's attention. So with that, we want to kind of pay a little homage and get back into that just a little bit. So AD, tell us about your experience in Montgomery in regards to the small college World Series.
Before I get into that, first of all, I wish my mother would have put me into some gymnastics because I'm stiff as a board. Might have helped me out, and you may not know me today if she would have done that, because I think my athletic career would have gone a little bit longer.
Great point. Well taken. A way to tie it in our last interview. I like that. You've been working on it, AD.
I was watching. I was watching. But getting back to Montgomery, Alabama, Black College World Series. And before we even get into the game, there was such a synergy with this first Black College World Series happening in Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery, Alabama, the first Confederate capital of the Confederate States of America. We were 4 blocks west of Dexter Street Baptist Church, Dr. King's church. We were 4 blocks north of where Rosa Parks began the bus boycott.
All of that history.
The fact that this, and then there's so much Black, African-American, civil rights, whatever acronym you want to use, history within about a 1-hour radius of there, from Selma to Whitehall, Alabama, to Tuskegee, to Montgomery itself. The fact that this historic event happened in Montgomery, Alabama, kind of touched me as somebody who lived in that area for all the years that I did live in that area, for 17 years that I lived in that area.
Great points made. Go ahead, Charles, follow up.
Well, I was curious in terms of the matchups. What did you think were sort of the matchups that you were really looking forward to watching?
The first matchup I was looking forward to see, was this Xavier team as good as everybody said they were on paper? They came into the tournament 23-7, I do believe. But I didn't know anything about the people who they were playing. I didn't know anything about their opponents. So were they playing quality competition, or were they just stacking victories? That was the first question that I had in my mind coming into the tournament. You know, Xavier came in number 1 seed. So watching this Xavier team, they play for lack of a better word, old-fashioned Negro League baseball. They gonna get on base. They'll small ball you. They try to steal bases. They bunting, but they can't hit for the fences. They're a gap-to-gap team. They had good pitching. The only thing that hurt Xavier was throughout the tournament, they made untimely errors, and the Frederick kid, let me give you his name in just a moment. This kid struck out 17 batters. Blair Frederick, Xavier, struck out 17 batters in the opening game for Xavier.
Wow,
now,
nice.
Let me take that one step deeper. He pitched 6 innings.
Wow.
The first out was the ground ball to the shortstop. The next 17 outs he recorded were via the K.
Yeah, go sit down.
Wow.
Now, ask me why he did not get the W, fellas.
Some error? Somebody made an error?
He hit 4 batters, he hit 3 batters and walked 4.
I was about to say he had to have some base on balls out there somewhere. So.
Yes, he hit. So that's 7 free passes, in addition to giving up a couple of hits, behind those walks and hit batters and everything. But 17 strikeouts is 17 strikeouts. I don't care what happens in between them. That's still amazing.
Were those 17 strikeouts? Were they? Was he throwing junk, or did he have a nice, healthy fastball?
17 consecutive strikeouts. You have to have a variety of pitches. He was fastball, curveball, changeup. And you did not know which one was coming on a 2-strike, and threw a lot of first ball strikes. So that's what you need when you get ahead in the count. You've got the batter on their heels. The next team that was they didn't surprise me, but they surprised a lot of people in the tournament was Florida Memorial. Florida Memorial only came in with 6 wins, but they play in, not arguably, in statistically the best baseball conference in NAIA. That conference, the Sun Conference, has 4 teams ranked in the top 25 in NAIA, and another 2 teams receiving votes.
Yeah,
I get.
No wonder they finished number 9 in their conference.
Exactly.
But if there ain't any other conference, they're middle of the pack to the top of the conference. But when you have that much competition in the conference, and the conference that has pitchers throwing 94, 95, 96 miles an hour, that's amazing. So when
there's a good competition, yeah.
So when they came to this tournament, and you probably had about maybe 2 pitchers who hit 90 on the gun. Most of them were high 80s, 87, 88, 89, but you only had 1 or 2 pitchers who hit 90. Florida Memorial had an advantage because the ball slowed down just that half second, or just that split second, to allow them to get some timely hits. Good. So those were the 2 things that surprised me out of the conference. And then you take a Bluefield State who ultimately won the conference. Won the tournament. They played outstanding. They took advantage of the opportunities presented to them. They did not beat anybody's brains in, but you made a mistake. They took advantage of it. You walked the leadoff batter. That leadoff batter was going to score. You committed a 2-out error. That person was going to score. That's what separated Bluefield State from the rest of the competition.
No doubt about it. We got 2 minutes before we close on this segment, and then we're going to hold you over and we'll change subjects a little bit. But as we have you on this small tournament, you talked about the pitching and some of the teams that did really well, particularly. But let's talk about some of the hitting. What anybody come out there with some power, or any particular player that really showed off on the offensive side of the game that grabbed your attention?
Connor Tanner was the tournament MVP.
Okay.
He pitched 7 innings in his only 7 scoreless innings. Did not give up an earned run, and he also batted over 400 in the series. So he was a two-way player.
Nice.
Yeah. And competed in the home run derby. He competed in the home run derby right before the start that he gave up 7 scoreless, 7 unearned, not unearned. He's pitched 7 innings, did not give up an earned run. You gonna add something, Charles?
That home run derby. That sounded like some fun. How did that go to you in your estimation? I saw you out there passing the mic and talk to him. That looked like it was some entertainment fun there.
Oh, I pull up my best. I've watched the home run derby on ESPN for so many years. As like I told Roy, I'm like I'm going to be on the field for the on-camera interview during the home run derby. As soon as they come off, I was calling them over. Boom, talk. Give me 30 seconds. Give me 2 minutes, and just going back and forth. The immediate reactions, and then just the conversation, and they were competing against each other in that home run derby, but they were also cheering for each other. You know. Okay. And the funny thing about the home run derby, we were in the booth. We was like, will we have a home run before the home run derby? We did not have a home run until the 4th inning of the game before the home run derby, which was game 5 of the series.
Wow.
No doubt about it. Yes. Williams snuck in a little jewel. He says he believes some of the former SU Jags had transferred over to Xavier on that team. So that makes some sense there. That's pretty cool. With them in their inaugural season, first time to do so well. Really proud to see what Xavier did in terms of getting through the season.
Can I mention a couple other players before we switch off, Dr. Cavill?
We really up against it. We need to get into this break. We can catch you on the other side. This is Dr. Cavill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're going to keep AD over, let him finish on some of his comments about some great players, and then we'll get in and sneak in this final weekend and his thoughts on the large Division World Series that looks like it was coming up, and maybe some of his thoughts on that. This is Dr. Cavill's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
They play. How they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAG. And let me say, what's up to Tennessee State? You tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles.
HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're continuing our interview with A.D. Drew, talking about the small division Black College World Series, big time matchup. I know there are a couple of players that you also wanted to point out.
Yeah, a couple other players who had outstanding tournament. Junior Sanchez for Florida Memorial, Philip Boulard for Savannah State, J.R. McCree from Bluefield State, and wait a minute, I got to find my one other one from Edward Waters, Santana from Edward Waters. You know, all these teams, and the other team I didn't mention was Russ. Russ, very young team. Expect to see them back. Expect to see them do good in the future in the tournament. Blair Frederick was also a two-way player. He batted .444 in the tournament, in addition to those 17 strikeouts that you saw from him.
Wow.
Go ahead, Charles. You want to follow up with a question?
Yeah, well, we always sort of make this comparison, especially with football, when we take a look at the CIAA or the SIAC teams, how they compare to the SWAC MEAC teams. But how do some of these small
basketball as well?
How do some of these small school teams compare to the SWAC or MEAC teams?
This would be a more apples to apples comparison in baseball and or softball, because those sports come down to one major thing, that is pitching. Does the small school have the arms to compete with the large school, with the larger school? The biggest difference between the larger schools and the small schools, the larger schools tend to have more POs, pitchers only, versus the small schools that will have two-way players. So if you're looking for a good matchup of a small school team that can compete against a large school team, find a team with a lot of POs on it so that they can throw arms without those players having to worry about fielding the position, starting right field, and things like that. So that would be the thing that you would have to look for to find a good matchup of a team, a small team that can compare to a SWAC or a MEAC team that can compete with them.
Sure thing.
I know that it looks like there's a plan to do the large or major division, as I like to call them, in terms of Division I programs, champion out of the MEAC, champion out of the SWAC. We talked about at the beginning of the show, Jackson State being undefeated, Grambling leading in the way in the West, trying to hold on to the West. Oddly enough, trying to hold on for Prairie View, which is fascinating in story there. But you still got Southern, you still have Pine Bluff, as well as Texas Southern. You want to keep your eyes on. And then you have Alabama State that's one in the champ. Who you got coming out of the SWAC ultimately that you think is going to be the representative for the SWAC playing in this?
That Jackson State team is going to be hard to beat, but what they say, good pitching beats good hitting any day of the week. And in a double elimination tournament, anything can happen. We saw the no-hitter last night in Major League Baseball, where the guy was dropped third strike from a perfect game.
Yeah.
So anything can happen in baseball. And speaking of that large school tournament, Jackson State would be the favorite against anybody else HBCU. But the feel-good story would be North Carolina Central in their last year, if they could get to that World Series and actually win it, with their program being defunded after this year.
Yeah.
Getting that a little more, final question I have for you is the MEAC, splitting the Northern Division, Southern Division. They're fighting it out in the Southern Division with A&T, North Carolina Central, and FAMU in so many different ways. And all of them have a different story of why they want to bring home their championship. This is not excluding the teams from the North, but you tend to have the stronger teams in the South. But before I say that, you do have Norfolk State is playing some good baseball, Coppin State as well. So I do want to put that caveat in there. But Central, as you said, they're closing down the program. Will they get it done? A&T is going to the Big South. FAMU going to the SWAC. Which of those teams is going to represent the MEAC to play against what you said possibly could be Jackson State coming out of the SWAC?
No offense to Coppin, Norfolk, but I think the MEAC representative will come out of the South. I think, depending on how the brackets go, but I think you should see FAMU and Central in the championship game. FAMU definitely has the best, the toughest schedule, the best quote unquote resume out of conference because of their tough schedule that they play. But once again, the feel good story is going to be Central. And if there's ever a time that I would root against my school, FAMU, you almost have to root for Central in this situation. And you want Central to come out and get that last hurrah before these kids go off to other places.
Man, that's a stand-up guy. I can respect that. I've done a little bit of myself when I say, well, if my team couldn't do it, or this year, maybe I want to see the team do it for some reason. Similar to what I thought when Winston-Salem State was shutting down their program and went to the playoffs. I really wanted to see them go far, and they did. Really making the move on it. So it'd be fascinating to see what North Carolina Central can do and to be able to play for that inaugural, what would be the inaugural large black college World Series was fascinating. As we start to come up, I did want to get in here and shout some of this out. I don't know if we'll be able to get comments on it, but Shaquille O'Neal's son commits to Texas Southern University is fascinating. That should be one to watch. Texas Southern and Prairie View just seem to reload in basketball. Don't want to kick out Jackson State. They made a move last year, and I think they're going to stay there. But it's going to be fascinating with these new teams in the mix. FAMU, they're being hard to beat at home. They were one game away from still being undefeated. They lost to North Carolina A&T, and then you got a new coach coming in, Bethune-Cookman. That would be fascinating to watch. Alabama A&M seems to be on the rise, but let's finish off with a little bit of this track and field. North Carolina A&T to host 2021 MEAC Outdoor Track and Field Championship. I can't see anybody finding a way to take that from them, especially be at home. This is a national ranked team. The question is not necessarily whether they win the MEAC, but what will they do at nationals? That's the one to keep your eye on.
The question is, will anybody get to the Olympics off of that team? That's the question.
Exactly.
I'm almost sure that will happen as well, but you keep an eye on it. And how many All-Americans will they have off that team? Speaking about track and field, that is happening today in the SWAC this weekend at Prairie View. So you got some teams that are going to try to qualify for the nationals. That's one of the best tracks. As you know, that's where the Olympic team trained in practice as they were getting ready to go to Rio. You've seen the Big Ten come down there and try to get some good times in as they will want to qualify. So it'll be interesting to see if you have some folks out of the SWAC qualifying this week. With that, that'll do it for us. I know you talked about North Carolina Central started the PGA Works Tournament play on Monday. We talked about Prairie View, the one that came out of it getting it done. So wanted to get that in there, but that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We hope you enjoyed our guest with Coach Moore, as well as A.D. Drew, as he giving some insight on Brown girls in gymnastics, as well as the small division World Series of HBCUs. With that, again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattCavil, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You see it scrolling down there. Follow Charles, follow Mike, follow AD, follow BCSN. Download the app. You know where we at. Come and get some love. Stick with us, and let's get it done. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Facebook, Twitter, if you would. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. AD?
Of course.
Charles?
Lecture.
Dismissed.
Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach you